हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम टू टेस्टबुक सुपर कोचिंग फॉर रेगुलेटरी बॉडीज। हाउ आर यू गाइस? कैसे आप सब लोग? और आज के इस सेशन में आप सबका स्वागत है। टुडे वी आर गोइंग टू डिस्कस अबाउट सम इंपॉर्टेंट करंट अफेयर्स फोकसिंग ऑन द बैंकिंग एंड द फाइनेंस। इस फील्ड के ऊपर हम लोग बात करेंगे और इसी के अराउंड कुछ एमसीक्यूज की हमारी बात होगी आज के इस सेशन में। Before going to start the session, before going to start today's lecture, if you have any questions, any queries, please put your questions, queries into the comment section so that we can talk about them. Now, first of all, we'll go through few MCQs, जिसके थ्रू थोड़े बहुत करंट अफेयर्स, बैंकिंग करंट अफेयर्स के न्यूज के ऊपर एक व्यू डालेंगे एंड देन विल स्टार्ट विद द न्यूज़पेपर आर्टिकल्स। द फर्स्ट थिंग फर्स्ट, those who are yet to subscribe the channel, एक बार चैनल को भी सब्सक्राइब कर दीजिएगा। तो चलो स्टार्ट करते हैं हमारे आज के सेशन को। सबसे पहला क्वेश्चन आपके स्क्रीन के ऊपर, अ वेरी सिंपल क्वेश्चन. Around this news we already talked about this news. The question is regarding the 4 Nari Shakti branches of which bank have been virtually launched by the Union Finance Minister Nirmala ji from Bengaluru. So कौन से बैंक की ये नारी शक्ति ब्रांचेस है? The focus of these branches are basically depending on the women empowerment, of financial empowerment for the women, and to provide the credit facilities for the women. That is a major focus over here. जी हाँ, answer of this question is right. Answer is Union Bank of India. Manimekalai ma'am, she is MD CEO of the bank, Mumbai-based bank. They recently announced these 4 Nari Shakti branches. But exactly where these branches will be? So Bengaluru, Chennai, Visakhapatnam and Jaipur. These are the 4 branches were recently created by this bank. I'll go to the next question. Finance and Corporate Affairs Ministry Nirmala ji held a meeting with which of the following delegations? So recently निर्मला जी का मीटिंग किस इंस्टीट्यूशन के डेलीगेट्स के साथ हुआ है? ये क्वेश्चन यहाँ पे है। Answer is Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB. So Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, whose headquarters is in Beijing, and 2016 we created this institution. India and China were one of the initial members who created this institution, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. Near about 110 members right now working for or are the members of this institution. It was created to give competition to ADB, basically Asian Development Bank. So we created Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, one of the very important authority, and their delegation was in India, and Nirmala ji met with them, had some meetings, some discussions with them. That is the case here. Okay, we'll go to the next question. Asian Development Bank will raise its climate related lending by up to. ADB recently announced that they are going to provide certain amount of loan for climate related purposes. So they are focusing on reduction of CO2 emission, climate change problems, to mitigate the climate change problems. So for that purpose, they decided to lend certain amount of money. So what is their target? What is the target so that they will provide that much amount of money for this climate related? So 7.2 billion is the target kept by the Asian Development Bank. Now, why it was in news? Because US and Japan, they recently decided to work with the Asian Development Bank and focusing on these climate change bonds. So sovereign guarantee bonds being issued by some countries like USA and Japan, and that fund will be given to the Asian Development Bank, and Asian Development Bank is going to work around along with these climate finance. So basically, which countries are involved? So they are the US and Japan. They are the biggest or the largest members of the Asian Development Bank, whose headquarters is in Manila. In 1966, we created Asian Development Bank, having 69 members right now. So US and Japan, they decided to work with the ADB regarding this climate finance. So ये भी एक factor exam के लिए ध्यान रखिएगा। आगे बढ़ते हैं। From April 1st to November 10, the Union government collected how much net direct taxes? So recently, like every month, we are getting this information that how much net direct tax collection is there. So now the recent data given by the Central Board of Direct Taxes, and the data is about from the 1st of April, that was the new financial year, till the 10th of November, how much amount or how much taxes is collected by the government of India. And the amount is whoopingly large, 12.1 lakh crore. That much amount of money is being being received or being collected by the Central Board of Direct Taxes and in the name of the direct taxes. That is the case. Of course, it will consist of income tax as well as the corporate tax. Both the bigger taxes headings comes under this category. So direct tax increased by more than 21% on the gross basis to 15 lakh crore in the same time. Personal and corporate tax are included in the direct taxes, which I already mentioned. So income tax department issued tax refunds of 2.9 lakh crore. So refund obviously जब टैक्स कलेक्शन होगा तो फिर हम नेट रिफंड को भी इशू करते हैं और वही फैक्टर यहाँ पे मेंशन किया गया है. इट्स अ वेरी बिग नंबर, अ वेरी ह्यूज नंबर, एंड if these numbers are getting increased, obviously it will be helpful for the government of India to reduce the fiscal deficit, because if the receipts are more, if the revenue receipts are more, then you need not to take the loan and the fiscal deficit will get lesser. So that's why these numbers are very encouraging for government of India. According to Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal Sahab, India plans to establish a miniature Silicon Valley for global capacity center. Silicon Valley is a concept from the USA. So on the same basis, in India, we want to create a miniature Silicon Valley, a small kind of Silicon Valley kind of concept, so that many global centers can open their branches, many global companies can come and work from there. So which area or which state will be the focus of our Commerce and Industry Minister for this miniature Silicon Valley type of establishment in India? Answer is Goa. Goa is the focus of our Commerce and Industry Minister. So recently he announced that, recently mentioned that, look, every state in India or the way or the other way is talking about that our state will be the Silicon Valley, or the Bengaluru is the Silicon Valley, or the Maharashtra will create the Silicon Valley. Gujarat is also saying the same thing, same Andhra, in Telangana. Every state is giving such kind of statements, but the statement given by Commerce and Industry Minister will be very significant, because he is the minister of this country and he announced that we are going to create this Silicon Valley type of establishment in Goa. So Goa won't be only focusing on the tourism, they are also going to focus on the business, and that's why this is the focus mentioned by the Commerce Minister recently. Now, Harshvardhan Agrawal will take over as a new president of which of the following organization? This organization is related to the basically group of industries. This organization is representing group of industries. So answer is FICCI. So Harshvardhan Agrawal is going to represent the FICCI in the coming time. He is basically vice chairman, managing director of Imami Limited. So he will replace Anish Shah Sir. Anish Shah Sir, he is already the head of FICCI right now. So for this coming year, Harshvardhan Agrawal will be the new head of FICCI. So that is another important factor for the exam point of view. Okay, chalo आगे बढ़ते हैं. Next, India's steel export increased from 4 lakh tons in September to how much in the October? Still, the steel business is facing some issues recently. Okay, our export is increased, but still our import is more higher when it comes to the steel businesses, because the Chinese steel, which is a cheap steel, which we are purchasing, our companies are purchasing. So that is a big problem which we are facing. But a good news is that our export is again increasing from the September to October. So 44 lakh tons is the increase total overall export of our country. Now, for the first time current fiscal year, the import slowed following government imposed restriction on import from the inferior quality steel from countries such as Vietnam. Now we already started putting some ban on some inferior quality steel or some cheap steel, so that import dependency थोड़ी कम हो जाए, क्योंकि कितना भी कुछ कहे लोग इंपोर्ट कर ही रहे. इंपोर्ट अभी भी बहुत ज्यादा है हमारे देश में स्टील का. सो स्टील के इंपोर्ट को थोड़ा स्लो डाउन करना बहुत जरूरी है. स्लो डाउन करेंगे धीरे धीरे फिर वो अंडर कंट्रोल आ जाएगा एंड एक्सपोर्ट विल बी द मच इंपॉर्टेंट सिनेरियो. दैट्स व्हाई वियतनाम जैसे कंट्रीज से जो इंफीरियर क्वालिटी स्टील आ रहा था उसके ऊपर थोड़े रेस्ट्रिक्शंस हमने लगा दिए. एंड वी मेंशन वियतनाम, इफ यू रियली वांट टू सेल द स्टील इन इंडिया, you need to improve the quality of the steel, then we don't have any issues. But अगर inferior quality होगा तो ऐसे restrictions को non tariff restrictions कहते हैं. अगर टैक्सेस बढ़ा दिए, अगर उनके ऊपर ड्यूटीज बढ़ा दी तो उसको टैरिफ बेस्ड रेस्ट्रिक्शंस हम लोग कहेंगे. पर गिविंग द रीजन ऑफ इंफीरियर क्वालिटी, अगर पूरा रेस्ट्रिक्शन या बैन लगा देते तो उसे नॉन टैरिफ बेस्ड रेस्ट्रिक्शन कहते हैं, जिसकी यहाँ पे स्टील बिजनेस को लेके बात की गई है. चलो नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन इज वेरी सिंपल, एनटीपीसी की बात करेंगे. सो फाउंडेशन डे ऑफ एनटीपीसी वाज रिसेंटली सेलिब्रेटेड इन रांची. सो एनटीपीसी का एस्टैब्लिशमेंट को कितने साल हुए हैं, ये क्वेश्चन यहां पे है. तो 50 इयर्स ऑफ एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ एनटीपीसी 1975 में इसे क्रिएट किया गया था एंड 50 साल हो गए एनटीपीसी को. एनटीपीसी राइट नाउ फोकसिंग ऑन द रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी बिजनेस. On the daily basis, in one or the other newspaper, you can see the advertisement of NTPC Green Energy. They are very much focusing on the environmental angle these days. Recently, also having the joint venture with the ONGC, which we saw last time. So these were some important news from the or the important questions. I will say important questions from the current affairs part. Now we'll see some news. Now, initial news are a bit difficult because those news are actually focusing on some important aspect, and so please be focused on that. The first news which I'm going to cover today is about NFRA recommends revision of standard quality control and standard quality management and on the lines of global standards. Now, NFRA, what exactly NFRA is? NFRA is basically National Financial Reporting Authority. National Financial Reporting Authority is a very important reporting authority. Now what they do basically, इंडिया में जितनी भी कंपनीज है, इंडिया में जितना भी कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर्स है, उनकी फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग होती है जिसके भरोसे हम ऑडिटिंग करते हैं, जिसके भरोसे सारे बैलेंस शीट्स और सारी चीजें बनती है. तो नेशनल फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग अथॉरिटी हमारे पास है. कॉर्पोरेट अफेयर्स मिनिस्ट्री, फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री काफी क्लोजली इस अथॉरिटी के साथ मिलकर काम करती है. ऑफकोर्स द Finance Minister, Corporate Affairs Minister Nirmala ji is in charge of this authority. Again, RBI, SEBI, NABARD, IRDA, जो बड़ी रेगुलेटरी बॉडीज है, ये भी इसके साथ मिलकर काम करती है. इनका बेसिकली काम है कि जो भी रिपोर्टिंग हो रही है या जो भी ऑडिटिंग हो रही है, जो भी कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर का जो भी डेटा बन रहा है, फाइनेंशियल डेटा, उसको स्टैंडर्ड क्वालिटी में मेंटेन किया जाए. नाउ इंडिया में जब हम मेंटेन करते थे तो ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड्स को हम फॉलो नहीं करते थे, बट नाउ कॉर्पोरेट अफेयर्स मिनिस्ट्री ऑन द रिकमेंडेशन ऑफ वेरियस रेगुलेटर्स डिसाइडेड टू इंप्लीमेंट अ ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड्स फॉर द रिपोर्टिंग पर्पसेस. एंड फॉर दैट रीजन ध्यान दीजिए यहाँ पे, स्टैंडर्ड ऑन क्वालिटी कंट्रोल, देन स्टैंडर्ड ऑन क्वालिटी मैनेजमेंट अलाइन विद द ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड्स, जिसको इंटरनेशनल SQM1 एंड SQM2 कहते हैं. सो इस तरीके से इसे इंप्लीमेंट किया जाएगा. तो ये जो प्रपोजल है, ये सेक्शन 143 ऑफ कंपनीज एक्ट 2013 के हिसाब से इंप्लीमेंट किया जाएगा. अभी आपके लिए एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू अगर मैं बात करूं, आपको सिर्फ इतना पता होना चाहिए कि जो हमारी फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्टिंग ऑडिटिंग का जो स्टैंडर्ड था, उसे अभी ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड के हिसाब से मेंटेन किया जाएगा. बिकॉज इंटरनेशनल फर्म्स होती, इंटरनेशनल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस होती जो इंडिया में काम करती है, इफ विल मेंटेन द ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड्स, तो और इकोनॉमी को ग्लोबलाइज होने के लिए काफी इजी होगा. इट्स अ पेपर वर्क, इट्स बेसिकली अ पेपर वर्क, बट द पेपर वर्क शुड बी विद द ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड्स. सो ज्यादा दिक्कत नहीं होगी, प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगी. तो यही कंसेप्ट यहां पे है. You need not to go in detail about these standards unless and until you are giving the specialist exam. अगर आप स्पेशलिस्ट कैटेगरी की एग्जाम दे रहे हो, अगर आप CS, CS या ऑडिटिंग एंगल की एग्जाम दे रहे हो, then you will required to go into detail of this part. But otherwise, you just should know that Corporate Affairs Ministry recently announced under this National Financial Reporting Authority. Now, SA600 for the public interest entities, ये भी हमारे स्टैंडर्ड्स अथॉरिटीज की बात हो रही है, जिसको इंप्लीमेंट करने की बात यहां पे किया जा रहा है. बाकी और कुछ देखने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. सो 11 NFRA मेंबर्स, जिसमें कैग, RBI, SEBI, इंडिपेंडेंट एक्सपर्ट्स, फुल टाइम NFRA मेंबर्स, ये सब लोग आते हैं. सो कैग ऑडिटिंग अथॉरिटी है, जैसे मैंने कहा था रेगुलेटर्स भी हमारे यहां पे आएंगे. सो दे ऑल approved this, and after this corporate affairs ministry also in line with this implementing. So all the companies, all the corporate sectors, all the companies registered under Companies Act need to follow these new rules, follow these new standards for the financial reporting, for the auditing purposes. So very important news, but again of course थोड़ी सी difficult news है. आपको limited angle में ही पता होनी चाहिए, ज्यादा डिटेलिंग करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. But हाँ, there can be a question in the exams, not only the regulatory body exams, but also in the exams like the SBI or the exams like the IBPS. In case IBPS में chances कम है, but SBI can touch this part, chances थोड़े से वहां पे ज्यादा बनते हैं. Another news, this news is related to the finance, but the government finance. Now, continued imputes of empowerment of rural local bodies. 15th Finance Commission grants now released for the Kerala and Meghalaya. 15th Finance Commission. Now in India, we have this constitutional authority called as a Finance Commission. So 15 Finance Commission provided some recommendations. Now government's responsibility is that they should implement the recommendations of the Finance Commission, because Finance Commission usually tells that how the money should be distributed between center and state, how money should be used for the development of the local bodies, urban as well as rural bodies. So these are the recommendations basically given by the Finance Commission. Recently, we created 16 Finance Commission whose recommendations will come in the latter phase, because Finance Commission 5 साल के हिसाब से काम करता है. 5 साल काम करने के बाद अपना रिकमेंडेशन देगा और फिर रिकमेंडेशन नेक्स्ट टाइम के लिए इंप्लीमेंट किए जाएंगे. तो 15 फाइनेंस कमीशन खत्म हो गया. एनके सिंह साहब उसके चेयरपर्सन थे. अब उनके रिकमेंडेशंस को फॉलो करते हुए हम मनी का यहाँ पे डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कर रहे हैं. So many of the times whenever there will be a money distribution between the center and the state government, you are going to see this news. आप इस न्यूज को देखने वाले हो, तो वही चीज यहाँ पे हो रही है. Okay. Now, what happens basically? I want to tell you one thing. Many students, they only love to focus on who is the head of Finance Commission. That's it. They are not reading anything other than that. Okay. So we know the Finance Commission will be headed by which person. Like Filal Arvind Pangaria Saab is the head of 16 Finance Commission. Article 280 is for the Finance Commission under Indian Constitution. But we should know what is their function, what is their job, what is their role. Now the recommendation of Finance Commission is not mandatory, not compulsory. If those recommendations loved by the government or the cabinet, then it will be implemented. Otherwise, there is no forceful implementation of the Finance Commission's recommendation. But the government of India, they love the 15 Finance Commission's recommendations, especially regarding the local bodies, and they decided to transfer certain amount of money to the 2 states right now. Obviously, this money is transferred to many states, but right now in news, 2 states are there, Kerala and Meghalaya. So Kerala is going to get 266.80 crore, okay, and Meghalaya is going to get 27 crore. Obviously, Meghalaya is a smaller state, Kerala is a bigger state. So this money will be used for panchayats as well as the block panchayat and the gram panchayat for their development. Now, another thing, whenever the Finance Commission is going to provide the money, or whenever under the recommendations of Finance Commission, government is going to provide the money will be used under 2 grants, or the money will be provided under 2 grants. Grants का basically मतलब ये होता है कि ये पैसा आपको वापस नहीं करना है. ग्रांट का मतलब ये पैसा आपको वापस नहीं करना, ये पैसा आप पूरी तरीके से यूज कीजिए. पर ये जो पैसा है, ये 2 तरीके से, 2 ग्रांट्स के थ्रू प्रोवाइड करते हैं. वन इज कॉल्ड एज अ यूनाइटेड ग्रांट. यूनाइटेड ग्रांट का मतलब क्या है? Allocate for location specific needs across 29 subjects in the 11th schedule of the Constitution, excluding salary establishment expenses. ध्यान दीजिएगा. Now जब यूनाइटेड ग्रांट के अंदर पैसा मिलता है, जब यूनाइटेड ग्रांट के अंदर सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट स्टेट को पैसा दे रही होगी, अर्बन या लोकल बॉडीज को पैसा दे रही होगी, तो पैसा कहां यूज करना है उसके लिए एक प्रॉपर स्पेसिफिकेशन होता है. स्पेसिफिकेशन ये है कि अकॉर्डिंग टू द 11th शेड्यूल ऑफ द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, जो 29 सब्जेक्ट्स लोकल गवर्नमेंट के लिए, स्पेशली द रूरल गवर्नमेंट के लिए, बस वहीं पे पैसा यूज करना है. तो जो 29 कंसेप्ट मेंशन किए रूरल लोकल गवर्नमेंट के लिए, वहीं पे पैसा यूज कीजिए यूनाइटेड तरीके से. आपको उसमें से कहां यूज करना है आप अपने हिसाब से डिसाइड कीजिए, बट मनी विल बी यूज ओनली द थिंग्स मेंशन इन द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, और अर्बन लोकल बॉडीज के लिए, रूरल लोकल बॉडीज के लिए 11th शेड्यूल के हिसाब से यूज किया जाएगा, एक्सक्लूडिंग सैलरीज एंड एस्टैब्लिशमेंट एक्सपेंसेस. बाकी चीजों के लिए नहीं, बट जो 29 पॉइंटर्स मेंशन किए बस उसके लिए. ऑफ कोर्स ये चेंज होगा. अब सपोज सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को पैसा दे रही है किसी और पर्पस के लिए, तो उसके लिए क्या यूनाइटेड ग्रांट होगी, वो चेंज होते रहेगा अकॉर्डिंग टू इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल सिस्टम. यहां पे रूरल लोकल बॉडीज की बात हो रही थी, ग्राम पंचायत की बात हो रही थी, इसलिए फैक्टर मेंशन किया गया. नाउ नेक्स्ट इज कॉल्ड टाइड ग्रांट. टाइड ग्रांट में क्लियरली मेंशन होता है कि पैसा कहां खर्च करना है. यहां पे क्लियरली मेंशन होगा कि इसी पर्पस के लिए पैसा खर्च करना है. यहां पे सीन क्या है, यहां पे भी पर्पस पता है, बट अब आप 29 में से कहां खर्च करना कीजिए, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, वहां पे कोई बाइंडिंग नहीं है. पर यहां पे टाइड है. टाइड का मतलब है कि फिक्स है, यहीं पे पैसा खर्च करना पड़ेगा. तो यहां पे लिखा गया है मनी विल बी यूज्ड फॉर सैनिटेशन एज वेल एज ड्रिंकिंग वाटर. दैट्स इट. सो जब भी फाइनेंस कमीशन के रिकमेंडेशंस के अंदर पैसा प्रोवाइड किया जाता है, तो उसमें 2 तरीके से पैसा दिया जाएगा, यूनाइटेड एंड द टाइड ग्रांट. अब यूनाइटेड ग्रांट में क्या लिखा है, टाइड ग्रांट में क्या लिखा हुआ है, ये हमें देखना जरूरी है. जब आप बड़ी लेवल की एग्जाम्स प्रिपेयर करते हो तो ये चीजें होती है. अगर हम नॉर्मल बैंकिंग के लिए पढ़ेंगे तो many students will be only interested कौन से state को पैसा मिला, कितना पैसा मिला, that's it. They not even take care of finance commission part. But when we are preparing for the bigger exam, the officer level exam, you should have the courtesy to go through these factors also. They are really very important for the exam. ये आपके लिए काफी crucial बन जाएगा, तो यहाँ पे focus रखना जरूरी होता है. Okay, चलो आगे बढ़ते हैं. Retail inflation breaches RBI 6% threshold. Now retail inflation बढ़ चुका है हमारे देश का. CPI कंज्यूमर प्राइस इंडेक्स यहाँ पे इंक्रीज हो गया है and now it cross 6.21%. So now the CPI inflation is 6.21% for the country. So yesterday Ministry of Statistics program implementation gave the data, and under that data this information was shared. So all India consumer price index October 24 is 6.21%. So that is a point which is crucial. Now for the rural and urban, the things are also of course for the rural 6.68%, for the urban 5.62%, whereas food inflation is 10.87%, which is double digit inflation is there. So it's a problematic situation. We have the comfortable zone of 4% plus minus 2%. Okay, that is a 6% is the upper limit, but now it is increased beyond that, and which is a problematic situation for the economy right now. This thing also I have discussed in the morning, that report card of the first half of 25 is here for public sector banks, and the report card shows there is a 12.9% growth on the credit portfolio, 9.5% growth on the deposit portfolio, overall growth of business of 11% in comparison with the last year. Then profit margin is 25.6%, and NPA is also decreased to 3.12%, a gross NPA, and CRAR is 15.43%. So PSBs, the 12 public sector banks, their numbers looks very good for the first half of the financial year 25. So overall growth of 11%. When it comes to credit, 12.9%, deposit 9.5% growth. Then profit margin is also 25.6%. Then NPA, the gross NPA is also declined to 3.12%, and the CRAR is also maintained handsomely with a 15.43%. It's a good number for all 12 public sector banks. So again, questions can be asked. So please keep the watch on that. I have mentioned the whole news in detail. This is also very important part, which kind of reforms government of India introduced in last few years. जब से मोदी गवर्नमेंट बनी है तब से क्या क्या reforms introduce किए. So little bit information about those reforms is also mentioned here. The 5 pointers are mentioned here by the government of India, by the finance ministry. Now this is important. States borrowing at 60% of the December target. The borrowing of the state government increased over here. So capital outlay as percent of the total expenditure. Now you can see over here, the Meghalaya, there is a change in 29.8%. The highest is Meghalaya, then Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Assam. They are at the top 5 states जहां पे सबसे ज्यादा borrowing देखने को मिल रही है. Bottom की बात करें, तेलंगाना का reduce हुआ है basically -11.7. पंजाब में भी थोड़ा increase है पर बहुत minor increase है. आंध्रा, हरियाणा, मिजोरम यहाँ पे decrease है. So these states are having less borrowings if we'll talk about the recent borrowing numbers, but the Meghalaya is having the huge borrowing numbers, 29.8 यहाँ पे या 20.2% का यहाँ पे borrowing दिखाई दे रहा है. So state borrowing, obviously we need to keep watch on that, because states की borrowing अगर बहुत बढ़ गई तो it can create a huge deficit problem. तो वही factor यहाँ पे mention किया गया है जो exam के लिए जरूरी है. Now, DBS Bank nominates Rajat Verma as the next India CEO. DBS Development Bank of Singapore, they are working from India. India's one of the most successful international bank is Development Bank of Singapore. For the Indian business, they decided to appoint Rajat Verma as the CEO for India. Obviously, RBI gives the permission, RBI gave the permission for this appointment. Without RBI's permission, no one can appoint CEO and the MDs. So that is the case here. So he will be the next head of DBS India. Remember that. COP29, under COP29, there are some factors which we need to discuss. I will directly go to the factors because COP29, which is going on in Baku, Azerbaijan, and in the COP29, the first thing first, they discussed about the carbon credit trade, because money matters a lot. developed countries should provide funds to the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries to fight the climate change, to fight the pollution problem. So Antonio Guterres, he is the United Nations head. He was there for the inauguration of this Baku conference in Azerbaijan called as COP29, and he mentioned one thing: unless and until the developed countries are not going to provide the financial support to fight the climate change, the problem is not going to solve. Another thing which mentioned here, okay, which is very important, DBs, that is the multilateral development banks, pledge 120 billion for the poor countries. So World Bank, ADBs, these are the multinational or the multilateral development banks. So they are also pledging some amount of money. Pay up or face the climate-led disaster, also mentioned by the United Nations head. So basically the whole discussion is that the money flow should be there, because to fight the climate change, to fight the climate problems, the developing countries or the underdeveloped countries, they required money, they required financial support, and that's the discussion. So carbon credit is also being accepted in a trade manner by these countries in this conference. This conference will be till the 22nd of November. Many other things will be discussed over here. Now another discussion is that we are talking about reduction of the CO2 emission, but CO2 emission is increasing, and there is a rise of 0.8% CO2 emission globally. When it comes to India, there is an increase of 4.6% CO2 emission. So largest CO2 emitting countries in the world is China with the 12 billion tons of CO2 emission. Then the USA, 4.9 billion tons of CO2 emission, but their numbers are going down, whereas India is emitting 3.2 billion tons of CO2. So they are the three largest CO2 emitting nations in the world. So that will be the another factor. SBI is on 10,000 crore via infra bond. This will be the another issuance of the infra bond. Okay. Previously SBI raised 20,000 crore through infra bond. Okay. Now this will be the another bond issuance of the SBI. State Bank of India मार्केट में बॉन्ड इशू कर रही है, उससे जो भी पैसा आएगा वो पैसा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए लोन पे दिया जाएगा. Already in this year only, on the starting of this year only, SBI raised 20,000 crore from the infra bond. Now this will be the third infra bond of this year only. So huge amount of money being borrowed. Now why they required to borrow that much amount of money? The reason is that deposits are not growing. That is the main reason. अगर डिपॉजिट्स की ग्रोथ सही तरीके से होती तो शायद इतना ह्यूज अमाउंट या इतने बॉन्ड्स मार्केट में लाने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती. ऑलरेडी उसके ऊपर हमारी लास्ट टाइम भी बात हुई थी, ये भी फैक्टर याद रखेगा. Now IIP's growth is 3.1%. Index of industrial production, which is given by the NSO, National Statistical Office. The data is for month of September, not the month of October, because 1 month gap is there. So according to NSO, IIP is growing. Anyways, we saw PMI is also showing the positive numbers. So if PMI is showing the positive numbers, if the core industry is showing the positive number, but obviously IIP will also increase to 3.1% is the growth under the index of industrial production. The last news, but for the women empowerment angle, this news is very important. माना कि ये news directly हमारे economics और finance की news नहीं है, पर women empowerment, if writing the social issues angle, this is very important. CISF, Central Industrial Security Force, which comes under Home Ministry, which was established in 1969, and Rajvinder Singh Bhatti Saab is the Director General, announced that a separate battalion of CISF consists of 1025 women. So separate or dedicated battalion for women. CISF is already having women personnel, already having the women officers, but the number was very less, only 7% of their total human resource. But now they decided to create a separate battalion for women only, and that will be 1025. Central Industrial Security Force is the factor over here. So it's a very good news for women empowerment angle. So keep that in mind. So that's all from my side for the day. Some important news we have discussed at the beginning of this session. So please go through those news because will be crucial for the exam. That's all guys from my side for the day. We'll see you on Friday and Saturday. Till that time, bye bye. Take care.